Hi everyone, it is Steph here from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to a Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and for anyone who is very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 11th until the 17th of October. I read 4 books this week, including novels and 1 picture book. I read a total of 1,209 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 331 books for the year. Over the last week, I have been thinking a little bit about how I structure these videos, mostly thinking about planning for the future in how these go, and nothing's going to change, but I think what I am going to do is I'm actually going to structure the way that I talk about these books by categorizing them, because what I traditionally do is go in order of what I've read chronologically rather than grouping them in any way. So because I know that on my channel I read a variety of different things from kids books all the way to adult books, I thought what I will do is literally start with the kids books, then the young adult books if I have any, and then any adult books that I have. So hopefully this might help people. There's also always timestamps down below now so that you can jump straight to a book that you really want to listen to, and hopefully that will also be helpful to you. Enough rambling, let's talk about the books. One of the books that I read this week was Wombat by Philip Bunting. This is a children's picture book. It is a 2020 release from Scholastic. I think this is actually coming out in November, but I could not stop myself from reading it the second it landed in my hands because it is utterly adorable. Philip Bunting just does the most gorgeous picture books. This book is entirely a play on the word wombat. So even on the back of the book, you can sort of start to see the style of this book. Wombat, acrobat, old bat, and it quite literally goes through the book with all of these characters. My favourite wombat in this book happens to be what I'm terming now my spirit animal, is the om nom 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 bat, because yes, lockdown caused me to go in search of many, many treats. This is a super fun kids picture book. I am now a lifelong Philip Bunting fan and I will continue to read anything that he writes. I did give this 5 out of 5 stars because it will actually help me use this book with my students who are very young, because it is all about rhyming words. It's going to be such a great help. The second book that I'm going to talk about, I'm not actually going to talk about in depth in this video because I have a full review video coming out on Wednesday as part of a blog tour for it, and that is Trust by Chris Hammer. This is the 3rd book in the Martin Scarsden series, but it can be read as a standalone. It is a 2020 release from Allen & Unwin, and they did send this copy to me for review as part of this blog tour. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It is an Australian crime mystery story set in Sydney. It was a very fascinating read. I have not read any of Chris Hammer's previous work, so I was coming into this as a new reader. I did really enjoy the experience. So stay tuned for Wednesday, I'm going to talk about this in more depth. Then I read The Wailing Woman by Maria Lewis. This is book 5 in the Supernatural Sisters series, but you probably can jump into this series at different points without reading the other books, but it certainly does help. It was a 2019 release from Piatkus and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. At 9 years old, young banshee Sadie Burke was forced into silence when she manifested her banshee wail. We begin the story years later when she is living and working with her family. They own a forensic cleaning business, and this is all going fine until the return of her childhood crush, Texas Contis, who was also the son of the man who silenced Sadie. They have a complicated past, and as Tex begins digging into the history of the Banshees in the supernatural world, Sadie begins to question why the Banshees have been subjugated and why they are basically thought of as the lowest of the low. And she also begins to wonder whether or not she can truly get her powers back. Eventually they are forced to go on the run, and Sadie and Tex begin to unpick the history of the Banshees, as well as the organization that has oppressed them for centuries. So this was a really fun paranormal story. I want to call it a paranormal romance because there is a romance element in the story, but it doesn't technically fit the criteria for a paranormal romance either. I can't really say why without spoiling the ending of the book, but there is a romance element within the story, and we do actually get to see many of the characters that have popped up in Maria Lewis's previous works. Maria Lewis is a fantastic, fun, quirky, wonderful woman. Her books inject all of that in there. There's so many pop culture references, which is a passion of Maria Lewis's. There's a lot of fun banter. I was really excited to see Casper and Barry reappear. They were 2 characters who featured in The Ghost Who Courted Death. I absolutely adored that. But overall, this was a super fun book because I've never read a paranormal romance book with banshees in it, and it was delightful. And the final book that I read this week was Queen Takes Rose by Katee Robert. This is the 6th and final book in the Wicked Villains series. Katee did put up an early copy on her Patreon, which I'm a member of, so I have an early copy of it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I think it's coming out in November. Most people don't have very long to wait for it at all. This is the long-awaited story of Aurora and Malone. 20 years earlier in the story, Aurora went to Hades and asked for his help financially, and we find out why in the story finally. He agreed, gave her the money, and then told the then 13-year-old to return to the underworld at 21. We also discover very quickly that Aurora didn't immediately go back at 21 and Hades never pushed the issue. So suddenly we begin to develop this understanding of the relationship between Aurora and Hades and how he feels about her. At the beginning of the book, Aurora is 30 years old and her contract and bargain with Hades is just about up. She has about 2 weeks left. Then she will have to start making choices about her life, whether or not she stays and continues to work at the underworld or whether she breaks off on her own. And then we find out that Malone has approached Hades with the offer to contract out Aurora for the last 2 weeks of her bargain. Hades isn't particularly happy with it, but Aurora sees it as an opportunity because for 20 years she has hated Malone, because 20 years earlier Malone had led a coup on the leader of the territory that Malone currently rules. Malone and Aurora have had one previous encounter in the underworld, and since then neither of them have had much contact with each other, and Aurora takes on this deal because she is trying to exact revenge on Malone, but things get very, very complicated very quickly, and then both of them begin to realize that perhaps they really only know the surface level of each other. And I think of all of the Wicked Villains series books, this one felt like it had the most tension between the characters because we get the history of the two of them straight away at the start of the book that's been hinted at throughout the whole series, but this time we actually get it fleshed out so we know the motivations of both of these women, and we just see everything begin to unravel. And I mean, Aurora is a beautiful bunch of sunshine, but she is also fiercely, fiercely loyal and protective of the people that she loves, and Malone hurt someone that she loved, so she's determined to enact her revenge. But she's also someone who loves deeply as well. And so that's at odds a little bit in her character. I thought it was a really nice conclusion to the Wicked Villains series. It was nice to see a different side of Hades within this book as well, with his relationship with Aurora. It is also the setup book for Katee Roberts' next series, the Sabine Valley series, because Malone hails from there. And so there's a lot of information that sort of leads into those books, which I thought was really interesting. And now I'm very intrigued to read the Sabine Valley books. Queen Takes Rose is definitely adult erotic romance. It does have elements of BDSM. It is, as I said, it's a revenge plot. It's also a bit of an age gap romance because Aurora is 30 and Malone is 41. Although that didn't particularly feel like an issue in this book. I don't even think it was brought up aside from the fact that we know their ages. But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So those are the books that I have read in the last 7 days. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on reading them in the future. I would love to hear. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.